The pen hit the courtroom floor before anyone realized Zainab had dropped it. Not because her hands were shaking. Not because she was afraid. She dropped it because she was done. Minyi Kang watched the pen bounce once against the marble tile. His lawyer leaned in and whispered something sharp into his ear. The courtroom stirred. Reporters adjusted their cameras. Spectators leaned forward in their chairs, the way people do when they sense something is about to break open, when they feel the air shift before the thunder arrives. Zainab bent slowly, picked up the pen from the floor with the precision of a woman who had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her own mind, straightened her back, looked at the document one final time, and signed her name. She signed it beautifully. Like she was signing a check, like she was signing a permission slip, like she was releasing something small and temporary that she no longer needed. Minyi smirked. He thought he had already won. He had no idea what he had just lost. The courtroom had been packed since early morning. Word travels fast in the city when money is involved. And this was not just money. This was the empire of Minyi Kang, the man who appeared on magazine covers, who gave speeches at international business forums, who had a documentary made about his rise from a small apartment in the east side of Seoul to the marble-floored penthouse suite that overlooked the Han River. The man who once told a journalist with a straight face and no shame that he was a product of his own discipline, that everything he had earned. The woman sitting beside him in every single photograph, the woman who appeared at his elbow at every gala, who handed him his speech cards when he forgot them, who smiled for every camera without blinking, that woman had a name. Zainab Sadia Bello. And very few people in that courtroom actually knew it. They called her other things instead: decorative, fortunate, quiet. Some of the crueler ones called her a background prop, the elegant backdrop against which Minyi's greatness was displayed. His friends had made jokes about her at dinner tables she was sitting at. His business partners had looked through her during handshakes as though she were made of glass. And Minyi had never corrected them. In fact, he had encouraged it. Some women are built for boardrooms, he had said, laughing, at a charity event 3 years ago, Zainab standing 4 feet to his right, and some are built for the background. My wife is very comfortable with her purpose. The laughter that followed was warm and immediate. Zainab had smiled and sipped her champagne. She had not said a word. Now she sat in the courtroom with that same composure, that same stillness that people always mistook for weakness, and she signed the divorce papers with her full name, Zainab Sadia Bello, in the clean, deliberate cursive of someone who was not being defeated. She was being released. Minyi's lead attorney, a man named Director Cho, gathered the documents quickly and nodded at the judge. The judge reviewed the signatures, made a note, and called for a 15-minute recess. The crowd exhaled collectively. People began murmuring. Phones came out. Reporters whispered into recorders. Minyi stood up and buttoned his jacket. He did not look at Zainab. He looked at Director Cho and said, quietly but loud enough for the rows behind him to hear, "I want the announcement ready before the markets open Monday." Zainab rose from her seat without a word. Her own attorney, a small woman named Jae-young, touched her arm gently. Zainab shook her head once, just once, as if to say, "Not now, not here." She walked out of the courtroom first. The reporters outside surged toward Minyi as he emerged through the heavy glass doors. Cameras flashed. Someone thrust a microphone toward him. He stepped into the light with the practiced ease of a man who had spent 15 years feeding on attention. "Mr. Kang, how do you feel about the outcome?" He straightened his tie. He smiled the way a man smiles when he believes the whole world is watching him win. "Relieved," he said. "Honestly, relieved. This was a marriage that ran its course. Zainab is a good woman. She'll land on her feet." He paused for effect. "Some people are lucky enough to marry into wealth, but luck doesn't last forever. You have to eventually earn your place, that's just the truth. Someone in the crowd, near the courthouse steps, laughed quietly at that. The reporter followed up, and the assets, the company shares that were contested. Everything is resolved, Minyi said, cutting her off cleanly. The Kang Corporation remains intact. My team is in excellent hands. Business continues. He allowed himself one final, satisfied pause, as it always has. He walked to his waiting car. The door closed behind him. The motorcade pulled away. 3 reporters turned to see where Zainab had gone. She was already seated in a simple, unmarked black sedan 3 rows away. Door closed, engine quiet. No cameras surrounded it. No reporters ran toward it. It pulled out into traffic and disappeared into the city without anyone paying it any attention. That was the way Zainab moved through the world. Without announcement, without drama, and without warning. 2 days passed. On the 3rd morning after the divorce was finalized, Minyi arrived at Kang Corporation headquarters at his usual time, 7:45 in the morning, before most of his senior staff, because he liked walking through the building when it was still waking up. He liked the sound of his own footsteps in the marble lobby. He liked the way the security staff straightened when they saw him. He pressed his executive card against the entry panel beside the main elevator. The light blinked red. He pressed it again. Red. He turned to the front desk attendant, a young man named Daniel who had worked the morning shift for 4 years, and said, with the mild annoyance of someone expecting an immediate fix, "The card isn't reading. Get building security to reset it." Daniel looked at him. That look lasted 1 second longer than it should have. "Of course, Mr. Kang, one moment." He reached for his phone, but his eyes never quite met Minyi's again. Minyi noticed. He said nothing. He straightened his cuffs. He waited. Security came. A supervisor named Mr. Beek, a man who had escorted Minyi through this lobby dozens of times, who had waved at him on late nights when he was the last one leaving the building. Mr. Beek stood 2 feet away and said, with his eyes fixed on a space just above Minyi's left shoulder, "Mr. Kang, there is an emergency board meeting scheduled this morning. The 9th floor. You've been requested to attend." Minyi blinked. "Requested?" "Yes, sir. I call the board meetings." Mr. Beek said nothing. Minyi felt something cold move through his chest. Not fear. He was not a man who arrived at fear quickly, but something adjacent to it, something unfamiliar and unwelcome pressing against the inside of his ribs like a stone he had not expected to find there. He took the elevator to the 9th floor. The boardroom was already full. Every seat at the long table was occupied. His chief legal officer, his head of operations, his CFO, 3 of his senior board members, and at the head of the table, the seat that Minyi himself always occupied, sat Chairman Park Hyun-woo, a man in his late 60s with the quiet authority of someone who had been in rooms like this for 40 years and had never once flinched. Minyi entered the room, and the conversation stopped. "Park," he said, keeping his voice level, "what is this?" Chairman Park looked at him with an expression that was not unkind. That was almost worse, the absence of cruelty, because it meant what was coming was not personal, it was simply business. "Please sit down, Minyi." "I'll stand." A pause. "As you prefer," Chairman Park said. "The board convened an emergency session this morning to address a matter of urgent governance. A formal vote was conducted last night via secure proxy." He opened a folder in front of him. The vote passed with a 7-2 majority. Effective immediately, Minyi Kang is removed from the position of Chief Executive Officer of Kang Corporation. The room was silent. Absolute silence. Minyi laughed. It came out genuine. The sharp, disbelieving laugh of a man who had heard something so absurd that his body responded before his mind could catch up. "Remove me," he repeated. Remove me. He looked around the table at the faces of the men who had worked beside him, who had eaten at his table, who had toasted him at year-end dinners. I own this company. I built this company. You cannot remove the man who built the company. Chairman Park slid a document across the table. Min-yi did not move to take it. Mr. Park spoke anyway. You built a great deal, Min-yi. That is not in dispute, but ownership of the corporation is a matter of record. And the record shows something that most people, including you, it seems, never fully understood. He tapped the document. Majority shareholder of Kang Corporation, as of the restructuring of 12 years ago, Zainab Sadia Bello. The silence that followed was different from the first one. This was not the silence of a room waiting for something to happen. This was the silence of a room absorbing a detonation. Min-yi's jaw tightened. His hands, flat on the table's edge, pressed down hard enough that his knuckles paled. He looked at the document. He read it. He read it again. He read it a third time, as though the words might rearrange themselves if he looked long enough. They did not. This is fraud, he said. This is a fabrication. The documents are certified, Chairman Park replied. Our legal team reviewed them for the past 48 hours. The Securities Commission verified them this morning. Min-yi looked up at his CFO, a man named Song Tae-yeon, who had been with the company for 11 years. Song, tell me this is wrong. Song Tae-yeon looked at the table. Just the table. He said nothing. Min-yi turned to his legal officer. The same answer. The same eyes finding the floor, the window, the ceiling, anywhere but his face. He was surrounded by people who already knew, and had known for longer than this morning. Before we continue with what happened next, before we watch what happens when a house of cards meets the woman who owns the foundation, I want to take a moment, just a moment. Because this story is not just about power or betrayal or the kind of justice that comes when the world finally catches up to the truth. It is also about patience, about the kind of strength that does not announce itself, about the women and men who carry empires quietly on their backs while someone else takes the bow. And right now, I want to speak directly to you, our Velvet Empire family. Some of you have been watching from the very beginning. Some of you found us recently, but whether you have been here for years or you are new to this community, you are family to us, and family deserves to be prayed over. So before we go further, receive this blessing. May your body be strong and your health protected from sudden illness, from unseen attack, from the weariness that comes from carrying too much for too long. May your home be a place of peace, not performance. May the ones you love sleep safely. May your children and grandchildren carry favor wherever they go, in schools, in careers, in every room they enter. May your finances be steady even in uncertain seasons. May wisdom find you before confusion does, and may every decision you make carry clarity. For those of you who smile in public but carry something heavy in private, may that hidden burden be lifted. May your later years be full of joy, not regret. May your purpose find its completion. May you be loved well, may you live long, and may everything the enemy meant to take from you be returned with interest. That is our prayer for you always. If this blessed you today, please like this video right now and subscribe to Velvet Empire Stories. We mean it when we say your subscription is what keeps this family together. It is what keeps the lights on, keeps the stories coming, keeps this community alive. We are nothing without you. Comment the word Amen below so we can see you, so we know you are here. You are not just a viewer, you are part of this family. Now, let's go back to the boardroom, because Min-yi Kang is about to learn the full truth, and nothing will be the same after this. The board revealed everything that had been buried for 12 years. A decade earlier, Kang Corporation had not been the gleaming tower it presented to the world. It had been a company in freefall, overextended, over-leveraged, bleeding money from 3 failed expansion projects. The banks had reviewed the books and declined. The institutional investors had quietly begun pulling their positions. The CFO at the time had submitted a private resignation letter that was intercepted and suppressed by Min Yi himself. The company was 6 weeks from collapse. And then a private investment trust made a substantial capital injection, quietly, without press releases, without board announcements. The trust acquired controlling shares at a deeply undervalued price, restructured 2 key debt positions, and extended a private line of credit that kept the company operational through its crisis quarter. The trust had no public profile, no corporate footprint. It existed only in the filings, and even those filings had been structured through 3 layers of holding companies that made direct attribution nearly impossible. Until now. Chairman Park turned to the next page of the document and continued reading. The trust, Belleva Capital Holdings, was formed and funded by Zainab Sadia Bello using inheritance capital from her family's investment portfolio in Lagos and Abuja. She authorized the acquisition personally. She directed the restructuring strategy through a third-party financial advisory firm, and she did so with one explicit condition. Min Yi had not moved. He stood at the edge of the table like a man who had been turned to stone. "What condition?" he asked. His voice was quieter now. "That her name never appear in any public communication about the company's recovery. That Min Yi Kang would receive full public credit for the turnaround. That she would remain invisible to the press, to the board, and to the industry." A pause. "And for 12 years, Chairman Park said, that condition was honored by us, by the advisory firm, and by her." The silence stretched. Min Yi's CFO, Song Tae-yeon, finally spoke. His voice was low. "She asked us once about 4 years ago to review her position, whether she should divest or consolidate. We advised her to hold. The company was performing well." He paused. "She thanked us and held." Min Yi turned to look at him. "You knew." Song did not deny it. "I found out 3 years into my role," he said. "I was reviewing a legacy financial record for an audit. I saw the original trust documentation. I went to her directly. And she asked me to honor her original arrangement, to continue as normal, to let you lead." Song finally looked at Min Yi. "She said the company was better with you at the front, that you inspired people, that she didn't want to take that from you." The room was very still. Min Yi stood in the center of it, and something was happening to his face, something that did not have a clean name. It was not just anger. It was not just shock. It was the particular devastation of a man who had spent years believing a story about himself and had just watched that story burn down in front of him, and understood, finally, that he had lit the match himself. He had dismissed her. He had humiliated her. He had stood at press conferences and accepted awards for saving a company she had saved. He had called her lucky. He had called her background. He had told the world she was nothing without him, and she had let him, not because she believed it, not because she feared him, but because she was playing a longer game than he had ever known how to play. And then he had publicly divorced her. He had handed her the exit she needed. He had given her back every legal obligation that had kept her hands tied to his name. And the moment the ink dried on those papers, she was free. The removal proceeding took 45 minutes. Min Yi's building access was formally revoked. His email credentials were suspended. The corner office on the 32nd floor, the one with the floor-to-ceiling windows and the Han River view, the one where he had signed deals and fired people, and believed himself to be the center of the known universe, was sealed. He walked through the lobby with Mr. Beek at his side, not as an escort of honor but as a matter of protocol. Employees who had greeted him every morning for a decade now stood quietly along the path to the glass entrance doors, watching with the particular stillness of people who are processing too much to speak. Min Yi did not look at them. He walked with his chin level, his eyes fixed forward, his hands loose at his sides. Whatever was breaking inside him, he refused to let it show here. Not in this building, not in front of these people. The glass doors opened automatically. Cold air hit him. The city outside continued its ordinary morning. Taxis in traffic, a food cart steaming on the corner, pigeons on a ledge, the indifferent pulse of a world that had not paused for his collapse. He stood on the pavement and breathed. Then a car pulled up to the curb. Not a flashy car, not a statement car. A clean, well-maintained black sedan with tinted windows and no plates that announced wealth. The kind of car a person chooses when they no longer need to perform anything for anyone. The door opened. Zainab stepped out. She was dressed simply, a structured coat in deep burgundy, hair pulled back, minimal jewelry. She looked exactly like she had always looked, composed, unhurried, present. Except today there was something different in the way she carried herself, something that had always been there but had been deliberately dimmed. The dimmer switch was off now. Minyi stared at her. He had practiced, somewhere in the back of his mind, what he would say if he saw her after this. He had rehearsed indignation. He had rehearsed accusations of conspiracy and manipulation. He had framed arguments in his head about legal challenges and fiduciary violations and the treachery of the people who had hidden this from him. All of that left him the moment she looked at him. Because the look on her face was not triumphant. It was not even cold. It was something closer to tired and sad and final. Zainab. She looked at him quietly. She let him say her name into the cold air. She let it sit there for a moment. Then she said, simply and clearly, "You should have asked who built your empire." That was all. She did not wait for his response. She did not want to watch his face collapse. She turned and walked toward the glass entrance doors, and the security staff who had escorted Minyi out 30 minutes ago now stood at attention and held the doors open for her. Employees gathered near the lobby windows watched. Someone, no one was ever sure who it was, started to applaud. It was quiet at first, a single pair of hands, then another. Then the sound spread through the lobby like a slow tide. Minyi heard it from outside the glass. He stood on the pavement and he watched the woman he had spent 15 years ignoring walk through the entrance of the empire she had saved. And the people inside, his people, the people he had hired, the people he had led, the people who had respected him, were welcoming her. Not because they had been told to. Not because it was policy. Because they recognized, in the way that people always eventually recognize, who the real builder had been. Minyi stood alone on the pavement as the glass doors closed behind her. The city moved around him, taxis and pedestrians and the indifferent rotation of ordinary life. A cold wind pushed down the street. He did not move. He thought about the night 12 years ago when he had stood in his old apartment, looking at bank letters and rejection notices spread across his kitchen table, certain that everything was ending. He thought about how the next morning a call had come, a representative from a private trust, structured language, terms that had felt like a miracle he had not earned. He thought about how he had signed the documents without reading everything, how he had told himself he would investigate the source later. How later never came because the crisis passed and the momentum built and there was always another meeting, another deal, another milestone to reach. He thought about how Zainab had sat across from him at dinner that same week, the week the money came through, and asked him how things were going. And he had said, "Better, I think I turned a corner." She had smiled and refilled his tea. She had not said a word. He thought about all the words she had never said, all the corrections she had never made, all the credit she had never taken. And he understood, standing on the pavement in the cold, that what Zainab had done was not a scheme. It was not revenge. It was not a long game designed to humiliate him at the end. She had loved him. She had believed in what they were building together. She had given him every gift she had, her wealth, her silence, her invisibility, because she thought it was for something real. And he had wasted it. He had wasted her. The door of her sedan opened. Her driver was waiting, but she had not gotten back into the car yet. She had stopped inside the lobby near the front desk and was speaking to Daniel, the morning attendant who had looked at the floor when Minyi's card failed. She was learning his name. She was thanking him for his years of work. She was doing the thing that Minyi had never once thought to do. Seeing people. Minyi turned away from the glass. He walked toward the street. He did not have a car waiting. His driver had been reassigned that morning with everything else. He stood at the edge of the pavement and hailed a taxi like a man who was learning, for the first time in 15 years, how to move through the world without someone clearing the path. The taxi stopped. He got in. The driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror, no recognition, just a passenger. Where to? Minyi sat back in the seat. He did not know the answer. And somewhere in the building behind him, Zainab Sadia Bello was taking the elevator to the 32nd floor. She stood in the corner office, the one with the floor-to-ceiling windows and the Han River view, and she looked out at the city, her company, her work. She did not take a photograph of the moment. She did not call anyone. She simply stood there in the quiet of the room and breathed. And for the first time in 15 years, she breathed like a woman who had nothing left to carry. If you made it to the end of this story, if you stayed through every moment of it, then you are absolutely Velvet Empire through and through. We see you. We appreciate you more than we can put into words. Tell us in the comments who moved you more in this story. Was it Zainab's patience or Minyi's moment of reckoning on that pavement? We want to know what hit you hardest. And if this is your first Velvet Empire story, do not leave without exploring our other videos. There are stories on this channel that will stop you in your tracks. Stories about loyalty, about power, about the kind of love that refuses to announce itself. Stay and watch. Binge. This is a safe place to feel something. Like this video before you go. Subscribe so you never miss a new story. Your support, every single click, every single comment is what keeps this family alive and growing. We do not take it for granted, not one day. Velvet Empire stories, built by you, for you. The next story begins where this one ended, in the silence after the truth arrives. And silence, as Zainab always knew, is never empty.